Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully
Have it.
everyone can hear me. I think we're at 1 o'clock. So Andy, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Todd. And yes, I am ready. Welcome to the Friends Annual Meeting of the Friends of the Virgin Islands National Park. This is our first virtual meeting. Although I miss having all those in attendance right there in front of me, I've become quite used to this medium since most of the work we do now is all virtual. So I hope everyone's comfortable with it. It's going to be a little bit different, but the same exact agenda will be followed. I'd like to welcome all of our Friends members. I'd like to welcome our guest speaker, Dr. David Vaughan. I'd also like to welcome our Superintendent, Nigel Fields, who will be speaking, as well as Dr. Vaughan on planting of coral. I'd like to also welcome all our staff, park staff, Friends staff, and guests that are participating in this Zoom call. So to move on a little bit, it's been a very difficult year, I think probably for everybody with the pandemic and all the economic effects of it, as well as the health and the change of lifestyles. I myself fell victim to COVID in early December, ended up in the hospital in ICU, and I can attest to the fact that this virus is very dangerous, and I'm very thankful to be back healthy again. But it's something that we should all be very, very careful with and protect each other. It's very important. So this virtual meeting is a way of expressing that. I'd also like to bring up the fact that, we have this year lost one of our members that has been a very big part of the Friends, both in his generosity and in time and also in money. Him and his wife Joy have contributed regularly to the Friends projects. Andy passed away suddenly, unexpectedly, not too long ago, and that was a shock to all of us, a shock to us at the Friends, shock to the island of St. John, and I'm sure to all his friends and family in the States. It was totally unexpected. However, we have decided to do some things in the future with that, which I will bring up a little bit later. But I'd just like to give a little tale about Andy. He was a friend of mine. We had many enjoyable times together. He was, not only a good comrade on the board, but he was also a personal friend that we did travel with, which is the story. I happened to be on a trip to Africa on a safari, and my wife and I and some other couples, and we ended up in this eastern part of Kenya called Lamu, which is a sort of a Muslim crossroads for the African nation. And so I was there, and the ladies wanted to get down and sort of shop around at the various things they had on display, as all Africa has things that are just precious that they sell right on the street. I went into a bar that I saw from the ferry boat that we came in on. It's kind of nestled up on a little hillside. And I sat down at the bar, and the bartender says, "Hi, how you doing?" And he was an English fellow from England, actually. And he said, "What you having?" I ordered a drink. And he said, "Well, where are you from?" I said, "I'm from the Virgin Islands." He said, "You're kidding me." He said, "Whereabouts?" I said, "I'm from St. John." He said, "Well, what's your name?" I said, "Well, it's Andy." He said, "You're kidding me, because just 15 minutes before you arrived, there was a gentleman sitting in the bar from St. John named Andy. And in the middle of Africa, thousands of miles away, we were right behind each other. And he happened to be on a safari doing some work in a village, which is all about Andy. He was a person that gave, and he went there and volunteered in this very small village in Africa to help them build some resources. And so it was just coincidental, but Andy is a person that has been parts of the world, and he's given, and we're going to miss him. So I just wanted to take this time to pay tribute to him and all his years of service on the board. As you well know, probably not all of you, but those that are on the board and staff know that Todd Sampsell and his wife have decided, and their family, to return to the States because of some personal reasons. And we're going to miss them very much. Todd has been a fabulous leader for the last 2 years. He stepped right into Joe Kessler's shoes and expanded them and made them bigger and wider. He just did a great job. We're really sad to see him go, but we understand the circumstances and we support his move. But yes, that will be as of March 5th. We will not have his services as president, but Todd has volunteered to still stay very much in touch and to help us move forward on how we're going to go in the future. So I just want everyone to know that the board, and they've expressed it in emails, and staff of all, are going to miss Todd and his wife and what he's done for the Friends. So with that said, I'd also like to say that on February 6th, and I know that Todd will bring this up, and we can let everyone to know, we'll be having our annual fundraiser. And this one is going to be also somewhat social distancing and virtual, in the sense that if those that haven't got the information, I'll give it real quick, that you will be at home and you can have your friends over. Tickets are $150. Dinner is delivered to your house. Everything you need. There's 3 menus. I still think there's opportunity for that. I know it's been filling up. But if you want something special, get 2 or 3 couples that you can sit down at a table with, and then with your computer you can virtually watch the auction, the raffle. There's going to have music that'll be played, and Todd is going to do a few trivia games on it. So it's going to be a fun event. It's totally different. So please support the gala. We can't have it in person, but we certainly can have just as much fun. So get your tickets, go online, get a hold of the Friends, go to our website, and you'll be able to participate. So having said all that, I would also like to lead into, it's time to have a meeting. So I would like to call the board meeting to order at the annual Friends meeting on January 30th, 31st, 30th. And so the meeting is now called to order. Do I have a motion on the meeting minutes from the last meeting? I didn't see it on the agenda, but usually we do that.
Mr. President, Andy, David DiGiacomo, the lawyer, we should do a roll call of the board members so we can establish that we have a quorum before you begin to do the voting.
Very good idea, because I don't have them in front of me. I'd have to look down my little gallery. Okay. Please, as board members, please identify yourself and see if you're here. I think that's probably easier than me reading off names. I know, start with you, Ray Poulin.
Here, present.
Lanny?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. Miles Stair? I thought I saw Miles on earlier. Audrey Penn?
Here.
Curtis Penn? John, are you on board with us? So Todd, you keeping count on how many?
I am, and I can get down to if everybody is muted or could check their mutes, I can happy to run down through.
This is Miles.
Miles is
Andy,
here.
you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you now, Miles. Yeah.
Okay, present.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
Adrian Davis here.
Well, being short two board members, and when we will mention later, one of our board members has decided not to keep being a board member, but served as well, Andrew Lutz, and the loss, of course, of Andy Stillman. So I believe we do have a quorum, Todd?
Correct, we do.
Okay, good.
Hand me Donnelly.
Quorum having been established, the chair will then also entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting, if they were circulated. If not, we can put this off to the next meeting. I don't remember any minutes, Todd.
They were circulated shortly after the meeting, but we can certainly
Oh,
recirculate.
right.
next
Okay,
meeting.
okay. Yes, I do remember them back then. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the meetings? Any additions, changes noted? Any board member?
I motion to approve the meeting for the
Okay.
minutes.
Do we
I'll
have a
second.
second?
I'll second.
Second, okay, we have a motion seconded. All in favor? Aye.
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 Great.
Aye.
That sounds like all the ayes are needed. Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have a recommended slate of officers by the board. First, we'll entertain any names or anybody that would like to be on the board. If they do so, please make that now, make it known. Okay, I'll read the officers. The officers would be Chair, Andy Rutnick, Vice Chair, Rafe Milan, Secretary, Curtis Penn, Treasurer, John Fuller. Do I have a motion to accept the new officers for the next year?
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, we got that. Thank you. Okay, then we have new board elections, and I mentioned before that we're one short due to a board member who will not continue. And of course, we lost Andy Stillman. Those terms are both for 1 year for Mr. Andy Stillman to finish out his term, and the other one is a 3-year term. We are currently looking for new board members to fill these positions. So if there's anybody in the membership and or the public that is interested in recommending somebody, please do so. We'll be setting up a committee to look at the new board members, and we'll be sending that email out very shortly. So if you have any ideas on that or anybody in mind, please let us know. You can let me know, let Todd know, or any staff member or any board member. Andrew Lutz, one of our board members that is discontinuing, was from St. Thomas, a young man who did us enough journeys to St. John in person for the meeting for many, many years, which, you know, us on St. John as board members don't, have to worry about, but it is a big commitment. And so we appreciate, him being a part of the board, and his financial acumen and background assisted us greatly over the years. We have relied upon our board to give us all the expertise we need from various parts of the community. And Andrew Lutz, he certainly did, give us an awful lot of help, especially in our environment and finance committee. So we want to thank Andrew and for his service and wish him well in the future. Then the other point I wanted to bring up now, which is in memory of Andy Stillman, it has been suggested and talked about, and has the support of Joy Stillman, that we set up an endowment fund that would be used for children and the park, which we have a very strong connection with already, And it was one of Andy's most favorite parts of it, was connecting the children to the park. And also for the cultural resources, making sure that we take care of what's important here. And in these times when, we have an awful lot of revisiting of historical, cultural artifacts in the park, and the people that inhabited this island during the times that we are, mostly focused on in the past in the park. So we need to look at those. So it's very important that maybe as friends with this fund that we can influence that somewhat by contributing, not only our resources but finances, in order to see that we can look at history in a way that is more inclusive than what has been the tradition in the past. So I'm very excited about it. I know we've had a lot of donations already in Andy's name, which we have, which we'd like to put into the endowment. And I would like to get with the board and come up with the plan for the endowment and begin to set it up so that we can solicit funds. So I think that would be a very long-lasting tribute to Andy and his service to the board, and would keep us in front of us for many years to come. So that's all I have to say. I'd like to thank everybody again for coming on this Zoom on a Sunday. Happens to be a little rainy, so maybe it's not a bad day to be inside. But I'd like to turn this over to Todd Sampsell, who will give his report. We have Nigel Fields, who will give a park report, and then we'll have Dr. David Vaughan, who is spearheading the replanting of coral, which of course we know is extremely important. So Todd, please go ahead. The meeting is yours.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. And welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. Definitely like to take some time and just reflect on this past year. I know that's something that sometimes, given the challenges, we definitely don't look forward to. But it seems like as we were strategic planning and thinking about an ambitious plan for Virgin Islands National Park way back in 2019 and prior to 2020 starting, which is how our fiscal year runs. At this point in time, it almost seems like that's a decade ago. I know the pandemic's been hard on everyone. We heard Andy's personal impact, and I just hope and pray that you haven't had to endure the loss of a loved one. But knowing full well a lot of folks out there have, certainly our hearts are with you. The year was challenging for the Friends. There's no question, as it was for everybody. It seemed like members, volunteers, and visitors just couldn't be here throughout a lot of the year. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like everyone was here, and that presented a lot of its own challenges for the park and for the Friends and for St. John. But I just have to give kudos to the staff of this organization, the help that we receive from our business partners and our community partners, all of our volunteers from the board to the folks that worked in our visitor center and out at Annaberg and on our trails. The support that we had from all of you made for a successful year, even though we had challenges. And so I just want to say really proud of that, and just talk about some of the successes over the past year. We're all here talking about Virgin Islands National Park because of our shared love for this place and St. John. And so, as I said, we set out on this ambitious strategic plan, and 2020 would soon make us realize that we would be fighting some really unimaginable challenges. So what did we do? From a staff and a board perspective, we really turned to who we are and what we're about. And that was really, sorry, my slides are not keeping up. Sorry. So that was really us looking at, in good times and in bad, our mission is what defines who we are and drives what we do. And our mission is to protect and preserve the natural and the cultural resources that make our parks so unique. And perhaps more importantly, we really strive to better connect visitors to the park in a more responsible way, and to connect the park back to the community so that both Virgin Islands National Park and St. John can thrive together. Now, of course, we accomplish our mission chiefly by supporting the National Park Service. But we know, and we were reminded a year ago by smart people like Mr. Glenn Spear, who was a founder of the Friends, that we must also be a watchdog in the event that our government and our elected officials fall down on the job. And so we said loud and clear over this past year that our mission is to protect and preserve, and we take that really very seriously. We're lucky to have an excellent partner in the men and the women who staff Virgin Islands National Park. And so that's really what got us through this past year. And those folks that work at the park, they strive normally with not enough resources to manage our park from the ridge tops to the reefs in our beautiful bays, both the land and the marine resources that make Virgin Islands National Park unique on this planet. And so we're thrilled to be a partner in that effort. We work in partnership with the park, with local businesses, with scientists, with schools and volunteers, and all of you that are on this call. From the most heavily trodden places in Virgin Islands National Park, like the 27 miles of hiking trails that we help to protect, maintain, and keep in good shape for our visitors and our community. To protecting and restoring some of the most fragile parts of St. John's ecosystems, like our mangroves. We research, we define problems, we engage students and adults, develop projects to restore, monitor, and measure, and we just keep going because that's our mission. Despite the pandemic, the park persists because of your support, and the Friends' commitment to that really is never going to stop. So, I looked back at 32 years of the history of the Friends, 32 years of your support, 32 years of partnerships, projects, and programs throughout this community. And together, we've raised over $8.5 million for Virgin Islands National Park. And just to check, please tell me everyone sees the pie chart graph that's up on my screen right now. Is the sharing working?
It's working.
Okay, great, thanks. The Friends have been credited with helping to launch the park's archaeology program, and we continue to sustain it. If you look at this list of things, it's certainly not exhaustive. Our archaeology program, our kids in the park, we make it a real priority to connect kids with the park that's in their backyard. And as soon as COVID is over and water conditions allow it, we're ready to launch our swim lessons for all kids on St. John. We're going to hear about the potential to start coral restoration. And this year, we're excited to start supporting mangrove restoration in Hurricane Hole. After the storms, we helped to rebuild damaged infrastructure, clean up debris, and even collect trash when the government was shut down or the pandemic caused us to go into quarantine. And so we're proud of that. As we look back over the last year, we started, as I said, in 2019 with a really optimistically ambitious plan. We had over $1 million worth of projects and programs that we were excited to get on the ground. And then we all kind of know how 2020 went. But I'm proud to say that the staff, our partners, the board, despite the challenges, did amazing work. All of us pulling together, partners like Island Green Living and CORE and local businesses. And again, with your support, the highlighted projects were still able to get accomplished in 2020. And it's an amazing, amazing amount of work. And the whole focus for me here is to let you all know that you can be proud of being part of the work that gets accomplished because of your support. And even more so, as we look at the list, the stuff that's highlighted in orange is now underway, or it's slated to get started here in 2021. And so we're really excited about that. If we look a little bit more in depth, we look at our natural resource protection highlights for the year. We know St. John's coral reefs have been in decline for a long time, and there's a lot of work to do. However, over the past year, this new threat, stony coral tissue loss disease, really made its impact around St. John. And I'm proud that our partnership with folks like CORE and the park and UVI and DPNR, everybody stepped up. The Friends supported the effort, and we've aggressively worked to combat the disease. In 2020, we doubled the capacity of our sea turtle monitoring and protection program in partnership with the park. And it's another great tribute to the staff and folks that work throughout this partnership. In my opinion, we have 2 world-class coordinators for this program. I'm so excited and so proud of them. But more importantly, we have 99 world-class volunteers this year supporting it. They go out every day and they walk the beaches and they look for marks like this to see that a sea turtle come up in the middle of the night and lay a nest. And so we're just so proud of the growth and the success of that program and can't wait to see what it does in the future. Despite COVID, we know nature moves forward. Threats continue. Our sea turtle coordinators, they've initiated research that we've never done before on our turtles on St. John that's going to help us answer questions about genetic relationships, geography, offspring survival. And they began documenting the progression of lesions and tumors that we see that hopefully will help inform the park's management decisions in the future. And so really excited to see the growth of that program. We also this past year expanded our nest protection and monitoring work to the surrounding keys so that we could find out what nesting was occurring, not just on St. John, but in the small islands around us. And our sea turtle coordinators helped us promote the importance of the program by getting people out to see nest excavations. They did sea turtle seminars. They take people out on the water. It's an incredible program and one that we'll continue to watch, I'm sure, the growth of. In 2020, the Friends partnered with local botanist Eleanor Gibney in the park, and we launched an aggressive effort to combat beach erosion by replanting native coastal species, many of which were lost. If you were here prior to the storms in 2017, you know the significant impact those storms had on our beach vegetation. We promoted efforts around native plant restoration by giving away over 300 native and fruit-bearing trees to local homeowners. So I'm really excited about that program, and that will continue to grow. Just looking at the year, we had over 2,200 baby sea turtles make it to the ocean. We documented 32 nests, and again, 99 volunteers. I'm sure we'll be over 100 this next year. We planted over 600 trees to help protect St. John's beaches. And all told, even with the impacts of COVID canceling groups being able to come to St. John, we logged over 2,800 volunteer hours on our trails and planting those plants. And so it's just a remarkable thing that our staff and volunteers with your support were able to do. We think about preservation. COVID certainly impacted much of what we had planned for cultural resource work and engagement with visitors about the unique history of St. John, but there was still a ton of progress that happened. We started the year supporting local culture bearers at Annenberg, and they demonstrated traditional bread making, charcoal making, gardening. And of course, Matt Gibney's basket weaving was always a hit and had a group of folks always engaged whenever he could be there. The Friends is committed working together with the park to bringing these demonstrations back as soon as COVID allows. We understand our role in working with local partners in the park to help ensure St. John's local history and heritage continue to be passed along despite the challenges that we have. I mentioned the archaeology program earlier. Despite the challenges, they had an extremely busy year. There's ongoing work at Cinnamon Bay. New sites were rediscovered like Durlow, the aqueducts at Annenberg. And the Friends have supported an amazing amount of archaeology research and documentation behind the scenes that allows the park to move forward on some of their hurricane recovery projects that we'll hear more about from Nigel. And so we're really proud of that. But I gotta say, for folks that know our archaeologist, Ken Wild, he's been a busy guy this year. I can't even imagine how much time he spent on digs. And I know he was finding stuff because he kept asking us to order more burlap bags. So if you see Ken around the park, or if you get a chance to visit his archaeological digs, of course, he didn't have a million hours to put in, but he sure seemed like he was doing that every time I saw him. So again, thank you for the support of our archaeology program. We're really proud of it. We're proud of the interns and the work that they do. I'm perhaps most proud of the Friends' focus on connecting not only visitors to the park, but the park back to the community. Our amazing staff and our partners have really had to work this past year to reinvent who we are and how we do that. Certainly our popular seminar series had to be redone with COVID-safe virtual learning opportunities. And when we can get outdoors safely in socially distanced events, we try to do that. I would say early on in 2019, 2020, we were able to take advantage of some opportunities to get kids into the park, but COVID concerns pretty quickly shut us down. We were excited because we had rebuilt and we're running the popular Reef Bay hike, and of course that got shut down as well. So we're looking forward to those opportunities again in the future. And how can we expand that? But I would just say, rest assured that in addition to providing virtual opportunities for our kids to stay connected to the park, we're gearing up with the park to really bring learning opportunities back as soon as it's safe to do so. I mentioned earlier as well, we were able to get staff to reinvent how we did the really popular beach to beach power swim as a virtual event. And I'm happy to say that we had swimmers from all over the country participate virtually to raise funding for the park. And through the success of that event, we were able to fully fund a Learn to Swim program for the island's youth. We've got a trained instructor now, and in partnership with Cinnamon Bay Resort and Campground, we'll have a lifeguard. And that program will start as soon as COVID and the water conditions allow. I don't think anybody would be out there for swim lessons on the North Shore the last few days, but we're really excited to get that going as soon as we can. One special highlight, when we talk about connection, one of the things I've talked with staff about is, we're so excited about engaging kids in the park from an early age. And we try to make opportunities for kids to stay engaged through seminars and learning, as well as, summer job opportunities. We have scholarship opportunities for local youth to go to college and study in fields that will be able to allow them to come back to St. John for meaningful employment. And the success story that I'm really thrilled, and I take no responsibility for, but it's really important for the Friends and the supporters of the Friends to note that this year we had Danielle Olive come back after going through some of these programs of the Friends and being a Matheny Scholarship Award winner in school, and she's currently finishing her graduate degree. But she was hired as a full-time fisheries biologist with the Department of Parks and Natural Resources. And that's the kind of success that is so exciting to think about. The program of the Friends and how we better connect work in the park to the community can help lead to those opportunities. So again, because of the amazing work of the Friends staff, the park staff, our business partners, local schools, and most of all, because of your support, I really do believe the future for Virgin Islands National Park and St. John is bright. And as we look ahead to 2021, again, we've got an ambitious plan in place. We're trying to make sure that we stay COVID safe, but continue to move this really, really important work forward. And I will be, as Andy said, excited to stay engaged with the Friends and see that these things continue to happen. And so with that, I would just say again, thank you for your support and look forward to exciting things ahead. I do want to say just a couple of things. We had a big focus this year on what's happening at Canel. I want to thank those of you who reached out to the Department of the Interior and your elected officials to let them know your thoughts. I will say that a deal on the future for Canel was not done in the last administration. And I know the National Park Service is committed to moving forward with the environmental assessment and work on cleanup of the contamination on the property, pending what they find. So I don't know what the future holds for Canel, which is interesting because I was asked to talk to the Rotary Club this week. The important thing is the Friends will continue to advocate for what's best for the park, for St. John. We'll continue to advocate that the community continues to have a seat at the table as decisions are made. So your continued support is important in that. And we again, really appreciate everything you've done and more on that. So stay tuned. So with that, it is my, if there's any questions, I would love if we could just kind of hold questions till the end as we get through the speakers. And then we're happy to have some time for discussion. But it's certainly a privilege to introduce our Virgin Islands National Park and Virgin Islands Coral Reef National Monument Superintendent, Mr. Nigel Fields, to give us his update on what the park has been working on over the past year and as we look forward for the year ahead. So Nigel, over to you.
Hey, good day, everyone. Thank you so much, Todd, and thank you, Andy. Welcome, Dr. Vaughan, and thanks to all the members and friends who are with us. I'd like to share my screen, so I want to make sure I do this correctly. I am not seeing how to do so.
You should have a toolbar at the bottom or the top with a share screen.
Yes. Well, let's see if this works. No, I don't want to share that.
Are you still with us, Nigel?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry. that. So that didn't work. I'll try one more time here.
It looked like you were close. When you push on share screen, you should have an option of anything that's open, and click on the one that you want to share.
So my PowerPoint is open, but it's just not showing up as an option to share. It's only showing the annual Friends meeting to share. So that's why, oh, here we go. Now I found it. There we go. Thanks for your patience. Hopefully you're able to see the screen now.
Yes.
All right. So once again, thanks everyone for the opportunity to share with you some of the things that we've been experiencing over the past year, and to also give some forward thinking over the next number of months going into 2022. I did want to start off by mentioning some of the staffing changes that we've had. We continue to do everything we can to protect and bolster our staff. Clearly, our people are our most valuable resource. So we've had an acting rotation for a deputy superintendent. Ms. Sabrina Diaz will be rotating off next month. She'll be with us toward the end of February. And then Mr. Scott Simmons, coming in from Washington, D.C., will arrive probably late February, early March, and be with us through September. Our goal is to permanently hire in that position. So hopefully, as we end the year in 2021, we'll have someone in that position permanently. We have a couple of new positions that I'll just touch on. The Caribbean Safety Zone Officer will be our safety officer for St. Croix, San Juan, and for St. John. And this is going to, once again, to underscore the importance of protecting our staff, protecting our visitors as well. So looking out for all the safety things that we can do across the park, and creating a stronger culture of safety in all that we do. There's lots of opportunity for us to improve our safety record, and we want to make sure that's a top priority going into the year. Our park curator, Kelsey, has joined us. This is a professional level curator that we're happy to now have full-time on staff. As was mentioned before, we have a lot of archaeological resources, and our goal is to make sure that as we move our artifacts as well as our archives from their current locations into a permanent facility, that we're able to do so with Secretary standards. So having a park curator on board, we're so happy to have Kelsey with us to help us with that transition. We've seen some departures. Keith McNair, who had been the facilities chief for the past 13 years, has moved on into retirement, and we're happy for his contributions. We're looking to backfilling that position. We'll have a lot of activity going on over the next 2 years, and we're going to need to make sure we have strong leadership there. We're so grateful for the work that Ann Finney contributed over 5 years working with the Friends. She was the Friends intern and historian. She provided critical services to us over the past 2 years in particular, as we've been looking at these hurricane recovery projects. We're glad that she's going to continue working with us to some degree. Anne has accepted a full-time position in the Park Service as a historian, and she will maintain some of her work with us. So although we've lost her with the Friends, we're keeping that connection with her. She helps us with documenting some of the historical features of the park so that we can protect them long term. We're also very grateful for the 1 year that Miss Alessia Isolani had with us. She was an SCA intern that the Friends supported for a full year under the Archaeology Program. Tremendous work. Having her dedicating her time for a full year was fantastic. She's a St. Thomian, and so we were glad to be able to get someone local that we could hire for a full year to work with Ken on all the work they do. So a number of positions. We have a few more that we're aiming to get out there, but as people are coming and going, we want to make sure we're keeping everyone aware that we're aiming to build the capacity of our staff over time. As was mentioned, COVID was a challenge for us this year. Like this. But we set out in the very beginning to make sure we wanted a zero transmission in the workplace. We wanted to do all that we could to tighten up our protocols and to maintain staff safety and public safety. I'm glad to say that up until this point, we've been able to achieve that goal. So far, we've not had any transmission of COVID in the workplace. Fortunately, no one on our staff has also caught the virus, but we've been very careful in making sure that as we're needing to quarantine folks or having them to isolate themselves out of precaution, we're doing so that if there's any concern, indication that they have within their families, they're able to stay home or work from home until they can confirm that they do not have the virus. So we've been able to keep our staff safe. We have had tight coordination with the governor's office, with DPNR, with VIPD, and of course the National Guard, the VI National Guard. As Todd mentioned, when we were shut down for one period, especially around that time of Easter, the Friends stepped in and helped us out tremendously with keeping some of our trash collection ongoing and keeping the communication with a broad range of people and partners, especially the mariner community. We issued during this time period we issued about 175 commercial use authorizations. So generally, as we're ending December, going into January and February of any year, that's when all of the new authorizations are being submitted and approved. So by March, we had all these folks ready to do commercial activity within the park, and here we are shutting things down. So being able to keep the communication really tight and find ways to provide services for all those mariners that were here was important. There was a lot of concern within the community about the number of boats in the bays. So we stepped up our water quality testing, and we were able to demonstrate that there was compliance with our water quality standards and for the practices that are required for people to not release waste within our bays and along our shores. And it just demonstrated the stewardship that many in the mariner community have. So we're very glad to work with them, keep the communication open, find ways to help them solve the problems that we were all facing at the time with COVID. We've also begun voluntary vaccinations, just following the guidelines and the protocols of the territory. We've had one cohort of our staff go forth with getting vaccinations, and we have the second cohort that's also getting ready. So, Andy, I'm very glad that you're healthy and that you share with us your situation that you had. But certainly, we want to make sure that everyone does what they can to prevent themselves from getting exposed and doing all they can for public safety. So we're aiming to do our part as well. I do want to focus the majority of my time on hurricane recovery. We've made a lot of progress over the last year and a half on many of the projects across the park. I do want to focus a lot of the time around the things that we engage with the Friends on, especially when it comes to protecting our mangroves, the reefs, our seagrass beds, and also the things that we do with Skittles, and also clearly our Cultural Resources Program and our education. We have the goal of building a new facility to replace the what we used to call the biosphere, where our resources management staff, our science staff was housed. We also want to replace some of our housing that we lost due to Hurricanes Irma and Maria. Our main focus area is going to be in the Lynn Point area. So as you're coming up from Cruz Bay, as you're heading out to Canel, right at the top of the crest of the hill there outside of Cruz Bay, overlooking the town, you have the Lynn Point area. So our goal is to replace our science building and also build a new storage facility for our archives and artifacts, and then to also rebuild the archaeology lab that was destroyed out on Cinnamon Bay. Next to the archaeology lab, we'll have a room that we'll have for conferences and for public engagement. So the goal would be to make sure that the trails that are around the Lynn Point area have even better access, still have some dedicated parking, but also have the archives and collections much more accessible and visible to the public. Right now, our collections and archives are not easy to find. So we want to make sure that that's different going into the year. The goal would be for us to go into contract. Our goal is to go into contract this year, having a full year to year and a half of construction of the science facility. We spent a lot of time focusing on how to make sure that the building, which would be a significant building, but we wanted to fit into the landscape. There was an environmental assessment that had a public component that was done back in 2018. And one of the things from the public that we heard was making sure that the colors are muted, that it's not very tall, that it fits into the landscape. So we spent a lot of time looking at how to make sure we're being mindful of the features of the island, both ecologically, the visuals that we see, and also some of the cultural features, and weaving in some of those features into the colors and also to the textures of the stucco and the stonework that will be most visible. So we'll have more to share on this as we move toward getting ready for construction. We still have a few more months of finalizing how this is all going to play out, but we're quite excited about having a new facility on St. John that will be, once again, much more accessible to the public. Todd touched on Cinnamon Bay and the archaeology work that's happening there. Ken and his 1 million hours of time. And Ken has worked with a team of folks. Certainly Kelsey has been a tremendous asset since she's come on board, but we've also been able to bring in some archaeologists as support. And we're looking at another team coming in within the coming months to finish up some of the work around the cottages that are being rebuilt. Last time we spoke last year, I mentioned that we had discovered some asbestos materials in some of the piping, the wastewater pipes in Cinnamon Bay. That was unexpected, but I'm glad to say now, working very closely with the concessionaire, we've been able to have all those asbestos pipes removed, and they were removed safely. So now we're able to keep going with the cottage work and also some of the trail work that was really necessary in the tent side of the campground. I just wanted to mention a couple of things that this trail crew did this month. They just wrapped up a couple of days ago. They came in the very beginning of January and spent the last 4 weeks not only assessing the trails, but getting a sense of where they could improve hydrology, water flow, protection of the vegetation, and just improve the safety and looking at grading across the entire landscape and the area around the tents. So you'll see some befores and afters here. To the left, you'll see a before where the tread is not very clear. It's even difficult to see the sloping that happens. So elevation-wise, visually, it's difficult to tell what you're about to encounter, especially in the evening. And so they've made that much clearer, largely by lifting up the trail. So you're controlling hydrology and you're keeping the vegetation also protected. So just really tremendous work that they put into improving the trails here. So we're looking forward to the campsite being ready for full opening in December this year. So I wanted to give a special shout out to them for the Smokies crew for their work in the trails this year. The Trunk Bay Concessions, the work that I mentioned last year, we're proud to say that work is now being completed, and so the buildings are open and are in full use. And the area looks very lovely. We're very pleased, once again, with the work that the concessionaire has done with Trunk Bay. And in preserving the view shed, finding a way to reduce the impact of having to lift up the building and actually keep things level and just really continue to create a very special environment and a special product for our visitors. We aim to replace the reverse osmosis plant at Trunk Bay, and this slide here demonstrates that the site kind of shows itself. To the left, you see the blue area, which is all the FLEMA flood zones, so all the area by the beach, the pavilions that are there, all within that flood zone area. The green area there, which is largely where the restrooms are and the concessions area, is a large archaeological zone. So even though there's a lot of development there, it's on top of archaeology. And so we didn't want to bring and do any more development in that area. So then there's the parking lot over to the right. So the orange area that you see in the slide really was our selected option. As you get further to the right, that's all very steep sloping, which would not work for the RO plant. So the current reverse osmosis plant that produces the fresh drinking water and the shower and provides for the shower facilities was significantly impacted by Hurricanes Irma and Maria. You can see the orange yellowish line there that shows the watermark from the storm surge. So in replacing it, we needed to nestle it right between the road that provides access going down toward the beach and also the parking lot there, and do so in a way that not only makes it compact, increases the efficiency, but also is easy on the eye and fits in with the overall landscape. So the building is going to look very similar to the other buildings that are there, which is great. It's not going to be invasive. It will hardly be noticeable in a way. So we're really pleased with how this project has turned out. So to be another additional element that will be seen there at Trunk Bay soon. We're just beginning to get the schematic designs and going into the construction documents for some repairs around park headquarters. The building held up pretty well. The building was built around 20 years ago, but there were some damages to the gutters and downspouts. There was some roof damage as well, some problems with the HVAC system. So these are things that are relatively easy for us to fix. Relatively speaking. So we'll upgrade some of the lighting, the LED, certainly have a big focus on sustainability, getting the gray water system back up and running, replace the windows with hurricane impact resistant windows and replace the shutters, making them even more resilient for the future. And once again, replacing some of the HVAC systems that we have there. The playground and ball field interfaces with the landscaping of the playground as well as the headquarters project. So right now we're looking at those 3 projects in coordination. This has been slow and it's been a little frustrating, but I'm glad that we are still moving forward with the ball field project, and we're now just focusing on the hydrology. So as we are moving land there in and around the ball field, we want to make sure that the coordination between the playground and the ball field are tight so that we don't have water piling up in one area over the other. So we're just now wrapping up that so that the water can drain into the creek adequately, so that we don't have long-term problems there. So I'm glad that that's all getting wrapped up. So we'll be seeing some progress on the ball field very soon. Just wanted to touch on a few other things. The Folk Life Festival, sort of like what we're doing right now, is going virtual this year. So next month, we're going to kick off the festival in a virtual way, and it's the 30th anniversary. So we really want to pay homage to all the great work that's happened over the years and how there's been this continuity of passing the traditions from generation to generation. So that's going to be a feature of the virtual experience this year. The trail that we have underwater at Trunk Bay will be replaced. As you know, some of the trail markers have just worn over time and are not, they're in disrepair. So we're glad that this spring, that the goal is for us to, and I apologize for the typo there, the goal is for us to have the trail replaced. And it'd be a very nice feature for our visitors. The next 3 here, Annaberg and Reef Bay Stabilization, Creek and Marine at Hessel Island, and Lameshire Great House. There's a lot to be said with the work we're going to do with stabilizing and creating a more safe experience for visitors there. So I'm aiming to have a separate webinar that we can get into some of the details of what we're able to do with the hurricane recovery funds to protect these fundamental resources. All of these are critically important for us. And also we can have some conversations about what we can do long-term to even further conserve some of the special features, architectural features, as well as some of the metals that you see, the copper pots and some of the gears. Those all require a lot of technical details on how we go about preserving those. And so we'd like to have some conversations about what we can do to really preserve the history of these buildings for as long as we can. Clearly, we want to move forward with VEERS and strengthen our partnership with the University of Virgin Islands. Our Red Hook facility is open to the public at this point for day use, but we're also aiming to redevelop and repair the building that's there that's been used by the Park Service for our administrative purposes. Importantly, we want to make sure that that facility also becomes a key place that we can have an incident command post when we have our next major events. So being able to set up an incident command where we can have a lot of coordination and logistics management from that location is going to be key. And coastal restoration and looking at our mangroves and coral reef protections and our shoreline protection. Glad that Dr. Vaughan is with us today. We have a lot of things that we're aiming to do in the coming years to better stabilize our shoreline, to better understand what we can do to protect the coral reefs, looking at our current realities, and being very wise about how we're putting in investments into those areas. As Todd mentioned, Canel Bay Resort is still in disrepair, right? It's not being used as a resort at this point. There's limited food service and there's some water sports activities that are available there, but there's nothing like a deadline to get people engaged. And right now, with the retained use estate expiring September 23, it's really causing a lot of activity right now for us to get moving on what we can do to get the resort back up and going and make it, as Todd mentioned, something that's beneficial to the park, beneficial to protecting the resources, and beneficial to St. John. Our immediate goal is to conduct the environmental engineering and cost analysis. So we've got to do the environmental work. That will include conducting a human health and ecological risk assessment, and that will give us a sense of what we need to do for remediation. We won't know how much needs to be remediated until we can get on the site and do the work. And so that's our top priority at this moment. With that, we will have public engagement. So we'll make sure that the public is informed of what we're going to analyze. And then clearly, when we're looking at remediation options, making sure the public is a part of the process of that as well. Just a couple of other things I wanted to touch on. Some exciting news with the potential for a land exchange between the government of the Virgin Islands and the Park Service. The goal would be for us to do the exchange that would allow for public education to go from K all the way up to 12th grade on St. John. As many of you know, right now, public education on St. John is available up to 8th grade, and then high schoolers for public education go to St. Thomas to complete their high school diploma. The goal would be for there to be at least up to 12th grade. I know there's some interest in going up to maybe the first 2 years of college and maybe even getting a four-year degree with a partnership from UBI. So the properties that are being looked at for exchange include the Catherineburg estate property. It's about 10 acres. That's a little bit more centralized between Cruz Bay and Coral Bay. And then Whistling Cave, which belongs to the territory. It's out in the sea, but it's surrounded by park waters. So these are the two properties that we're aiming to conduct evaluation on, and we have to, what I call equalizing the value. I'm sure an attorney or someone else would probably say it a little bit differently, but the goal would be to make sure that the properties are equal so that the exchange can take place. And there's several ways in which we can equalize those values by either adding or removing lands, adding or removing funds. There's ways to make sure that both properties for the exchange are now of equal value so the exchange can happen. One of the next steps is to conduct the phase 2 of the archaeology survey at the Catherineburg property, and then move through the NEPA process, which will include public scoping. So the public will be hearing much more about this in the coming months. Wanted to give a special shout out and a thank you to Todd. We're going to miss you. I want to thank you for your contributions, and it's been fantastic to learn and to grow with you over these past couple of years, and wish you all the best. Also wanted to shout out to the incredible volunteers with the Friends, with the turtle program, the trail program, the revegetation. 3,000 hours of volunteer service is very great. Just very grateful for that. As we go into the year, our partnerships are going to be all the more important. So I look forward to continuing to work with the Friends and working closely with the board. Helping with the transition in the leadership however I can, and moving forward with getting these projects underway, and so that we can continue to protect the resources of the park, take care of the people of St. John. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nigel. Appreciate that. And you can stop your screen share. So I really appreciate that, Nigel, and it's been really awesome to see the momentum build behind everything that you're working to do in the park, and we're certainly proud to partner and support the efforts I think I can speak for everybody that supports this organization in saying that. So we're really excited what the next several years has in store for Virgin Islands National Park and St. John. So again, thank you. And again, we will have time for Q&A at the end for all of us. And so just hold on to any questions. I'm sure there'll be some around all that great work. And so now it is my privilege. I'm very excited to think about the potential for coral restoration to happen here in St. John. And so we invited Dr. David Vaughan to come and talk to us a bit, as he's been working with the team at National Park Service over the potential for coral restoration. Dr. Vaughan's held positions in aquaculture research and development for over 30 years now. He directed the Aquaculture Division at Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute for 17 years, including the design, build, and operation of the 60-acre aquaculture development park there. It's the world's only completely recirculating center for aquaculture training and demonstration. He's often cited with creating the research and development and scale up of clam farming technologies in Florida, and directing the training programs and operations of the nation's largest hatchery to produce clams used for the retraining of displaced fishermen. He founded and developed Oceans, Reefs, and Aquariums Incorporated, a large marine ornamental production facility. He worked with Philippe Cousteau and Earth Echo International on coral reef restoration initiatives. Dr. Vaughan is a recipient of the 2017 Field Museum Parker Gentry Award, as well as an adjunct scientist of the Field Museum. As previous executive director of the Moat Marine Laboratory, Elizabeth Moore Center for Coral Reef Research and Restoration in the Florida Keys, he started the Coral Restoration Program, heralded with developing the new technology of microfragmentation, which we're going to hear more about. And he's helping people globally in this process as a scalable tool for reef restoration. As the founder and president of Plant a Million Corals, he will continue to share his technology and passion for coral restoration to fulfill his goal of planting 1 million corals before he retires. And I think we're, as we talked before, we're looking to replace that M with a B for billion corals. But Dr. Vaughan received biology degrees, both BS and master's degrees in biology, and then his PhD from Rutgers University in botany and plant physiology. So now, instead of growing plants, Dr. Vaughan is growing corals. So we welcome Dr. Vaughan. I had up here while I was introducing a little information about a book. Dr. Vaughan tells me that's coming out later this year. So it apparently was delayed a bit from 2019, but I'm sure he can provide more information about that. So Dr. Vaughan, welcome. I will allow you to share your screen and look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you very much, Todd, and thanks for hosting me, Andrew. And it was a pleasure to hear Nigel's presentation just before me. That was very interesting. But I'll go ahead and get right into a PowerPoint presentation about a new technology that is a game changer for corals. We've heard usually for many years of the different bad things about corals, losing corals, the 8 different diseases and pandemics that were underwater for corals until the recent one, stony coral rapid tissue loss disease. And as we all know, the many other diseases when I was starting to get interested, from white band, black band, yellow band, white plague, and now this latest one, all have a terrible demise of the coral reefs. But after a little bit, really go away or change by herd immunity, not from vaccines, but from the natural resistant strains starting to recover themselves. And we've seen that with COVID. Even though we can't give the corals a vaccine, we can take the natural survivors. And now with this new technology I'm going to present, show that we can make more and in rapid time, Many of you already probably look at me in the picture and say, how's this guy going to plant 1 million corals before he retires? He looks like 1 million years old already. And don't corals grow very slowly? Well, the good news is that corals naturally grow slowly, but we have a game changer with corals. And I'd like to do that presentation right now. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and turn on that PowerPoint. I don't see it on there, but I see it on my. Okay, it's not picking up my PowerPoint, so I'm going to stop sharing and go get it again. See if it brings it up.
I just want to point out to everybody, this is unscripted, unchoreographed, and unrehearsed. So we certainly appreciate everybody's patience.
Same problem Nigel had.
Okay, hopefully you're starting to see my screen. And is it up and running for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So what we now call the new restoration technology is active restoration. And that is that we actually do something rather than trying to just hope that Mother Nature comes back on its own. And regretfully, in almost every type of ecological restoration, this is now the case. We've been used to that with forestry, planting mangroves, wetlands, etc. Now we can actually do that with the ability to have it happen with corals, which is a game changer. And not just with the one species of fast-growing branching corals that we're familiar with, the staghorn corals. So I'm going to show you a new technique called microfragmentation. And just like its name, it's cutting corals that were not usually used for coral restoration, but the 28 species of massive corals that are important of building the reef and protecting our shoreline and being the habitat. We can now grow as fast, if not faster, than that one staghorn coral that we've been used to in the past decade of breaking or fragmenting and making more. And now connected in with what we call reskinning, which is a technique that we put a few of these like fragments near each other and they actually grow back together. Well, many of you may have been familiar, like I was, from my first dive in St. Croix in 1966 to help as an expedition to try to look for the location of that became the West Indies Laboratory there on East End near Grapetree Bay. And this is what it mostly looked like, complaining that you'd have to swim over all of this staghorn coral and Elkhorn coral in order to see some of the more unique species like the brain coral. But over the past number of years, we've seen those live corals decline to this picture on the right. And there are too many photographs that look like this, the before and the after. But I want you to remember this exact picture because I'm going to show you a picture from 2018 in a spot where we took this exact location and brought it back to life again. Well, we need to do a lot of different things in environmental restoration. We need to actually give Mother Nature a chance in lowering the emissions from CO2 and improving both air and water quality. And we need to protect more marine areas like we've done on land with parks and preserves. But we also need to, and can now, actually restore corals and using corals as nurseries. This picture on the left is actually from St. Croix. And this is a piece of Elkhorn Coral that has had some growth back of genetic strains of the same species. That Elkhorn Coral had some of it, which in a disease actually died. We had some of it that you can see on the right that got the disease, but struggled through and came back. It's resilient, it bounces back. And then the left-hand side, Elkhorn Coral that did not get the disease, it's resistant to the disease. And what we need to do is make more of the resilient and resistant species so that continuing types of diseases that surely will come, just like land epidemics as well, we will have a living system. Now that's been done with the staghorn coral like you see on the right, in nurseries in the field where you actually grow and break large fragments of the fast growing coral in a nursery. And then you might be familiar with this, but this is a quick shot in just 1 year. These 5 pieces were attached to the bottom in May 2013. By June, they had branched to a couple more branches each. By October, the same year, they had already made small thickets. And by 1 year later, really becoming a habitat. There's a damselfish in there already taking advantage of the 3-dimensional habitat that corals also provide. And so you can grow these fast growing species very quickly, but these are species that are a little bit more ephemeral. Just like if you were replanting a forest, you wouldn't just use ferns because they may come and they may go. And so this species actually doesn't have a very long life, like some of the other massive corals, which can be literally hundreds, if not thousands of years old. So in marine aquaculture of everything else, and I was involved with clams and oysters and shrimp and marine fish, there's always a 3-step system: a hatchery, a nursery, and a grow out planting. And the nursery can either be a land nursery or a field nursery. Well, up until just recently, coral aquaculture was only use of the field nursery and grow out and planting of the staghorn facility, staghorn species. A hatchery and a land nursery was not usually used, mainly because they thought it was too expensive and too hard a technology, but that has changed. About 15 years ago, after working with clams and oysters in a hatchery where we used the sexual reproduction cycle, I was getting frustrated by seeing people only use the asexual cycle of breaking the staghorn coral into large fragments by hand, and commented tongue in cheek that I never grew a clam by breaking it in half. We would run a hatchery. Why aren't people doing that with corals? And it was explained to me that we didn't even know corals had a sexual cycle of spawning until 1985. And that they produce 1 million eggs, but only 1 in 1 million eggs make it every 25 to 100 years, which is incredible. So I took it as a challenge, took some of the larger Elkhorn coral spawn from 1 year, brought them back to the laboratory, and in laboratory conditions, got 11 to 13 of them to make it. However, in a few months old, like the picture on the left, those little tentacles, I had to take that picture through a microscope for you to even see it. It's amazing that they make it in the wild. And even a half a year old, this picture on the right is through a magnifying glass, and that baby coral you see there is less than the size of a head of a pin. At 3 years old, it finally got up to the size of a coin. And I was so disappointed that I took it and put it on the bottom of the glass aquarium tank in the lab and forgot about it. But went back a few weeks later and tried to move one of the pieces and didn't realize it had attached to the bottom and it stuck. So I went to grab it and pull it, and I heard a crack and I broke it into tiny pieces. And that quarter size or coin size Elkhorn coral broke into little tiny pieces of just a few polyps each, waving their tentacles at me, and I thought they were going to die. But instead, that's not what happened. They actually grew 25 to 40 times faster for the next few months. So I thought it was a mistake, and I took, like a good scientist, a scalpel and did it again. And over the next 5 years, tried it with every single species of coral known to Florida. And it works with every single one. There is some sort of response that a coral has to be able to, if it's broken, to quickly heal itself and repair itself at record speed. Sort of like our skin doesn't grow fast unless we fall down and have a cut in our skin. It immediately heals over in weeks. And so we think these large massive corals have adapted from millions of years of parrotfish bites to be able to quickly grow back if a bite makes a wound, and quickly grow its own tissue back to heal its wound. And we now take advantage of that principle. And we use a specialized bandsaw that is a diamond blade bandsaw made for making stone and coral skeleton jewelry, except we use it on live corals, and we literally cut them into tiny micro fragments. We used to try and grow corals by taking a massive coral the size of a golf ball, waiting 3 years till it got a little bigger and cut it in half, and wait another 3 years to do it again. Now we take a golf ball size coral and we cut it into 20 to 100 pieces. And not only do we get so many pieces, but they quickly grow back to size in months instead of years. Shown here on the right, this picture is just 2 or 3 polyps of Elkhorn coral, each then attached to a cement or ceramic plug in our nursery. And so was born microfragmentation. It's a new technique, but in one afternoon, we can cut 1,000 corals. And in just months later, have them up to size and ready to cut again. So with this technique, until I retired at Mote Marine Lab, we went from taking 6 years to produce 600 corals to now producing 600 corals a day. And so we're doing it on the same species that we know are out there, from the resistant, naturally resilient and resistant strains, and putting those back, making more. It's a simple technique. It can be taught to students and volunteers, as you see here, where we literally cut them on that saw, glue them to the cement or ceramic plug, and then hold them in the tank you see behind their heads in a post-operative style, like any operation, for a few days. And so this technique can get to those numbers you saw. We can put 400 to 1,000 coral fragments in one tank. So if we had 400 corals and we got 50 in just one cutting, we would be making 20,000. And in 6 months, they're ready to cut again. 20,000 times 50 is 1 million. You could do 1 million corals in 1 year if you had the facilities and the staff to do so. So we were starting to produce corals by the thousands instead of by the tens. And we're forced, because we only had a few of these fiberglass water tanks, to stack these corals close to each other, because we had to cram as many in tanks as we could. Now, usually we don't try to put corals near each other because they don't like to touch each other. They think another coral is growing over the top of them, and they will literally fight or draw a line in the sand to don't grow over me, or even kill each other. And we didn't have that option. We thought, okay, in 6 months to a year or 3 years, we'll get another tank. But they grew so fast that in just a few months, like you see on the picture on the right, they were popping up like popcorn to the size that overgrew the cement puck or base that we had them on. And they started touching each other, but not fighting, because all of those that were in a row and in one grouping were from the same parental piece. Since we're getting 20 to 100 pieces and they were sitting on their own tray, they touch each other and they start to fuse back together. You might see in the center of that picture on the right, they're actually forming one brain coral head again by having to recognize each other's tissue as themselves from the piece they originally came from. And like your skin, having a transplant onto, let's say, a skin graft on your other arm, your skin recognizes itself. And so this gives you an idea. These are ceramic plates about the size of a baseball. And in the upper left, we just cut 3 fragments and put them on there, or 4 fragments. And each of those going to the right in the row, and then down 1 row and down the next row, is just 1 week difference of a photo. So you see that within just 4 weeks, they were starting to grow towards each other. And by 8 weeks, they're touching each other. And by 11 weeks, they've actually fused back to a coral the size of a baseball, which would have taken 5 to 8 years. And that's been done in 11 weeks. So this is a process that is a game changer. They don't continue to grow real fast once they settle into a head, but for the first number of months, it's what we really need in order to get corals to grow fast and make many of them. So we've taken advantage of this fusing technique by planting corals, 20 pieces of them, about the size of a large pizza. And on the left-hand line, you see the 20 plugs put down with some square tiles for taking pictures to show how big they're getting. And the middle picture, just 2 years later, they've already grown over their plugs, up touched each other, and almost 100% fused. And then by 2020, this picture on the right is that these corals not only fused into a coral head size that would have taken 25 to 100 years, but they started acting like an older coral. And this past year, we documented almost all of our plantings from 2014 to 2016 actually sexually reproduced in the wild and spawned. Now, of this species, they usually don't spawn until they're about 75 years old. And so not only are we creating new surface on dead coral skeletons, but we're helping Mother Nature make more naturally reproductive corals out there so that hopefully in the future this can take place. Well, how big can you go? This picture on the left is a coral head that is the size of a small car. And so we planted 200 like pieces on it. And we've already brought back literally a 250-year-old coral head back to life. This dead coral head on the right is the size of a large truck. It is about 15 feet high and 12-foot diameter. It was probably a 1,000-year-old coral head. We put 800 pieces of the same clone on top of it. And we hope to bring a 1,000-year-old coral head back to life in less than 5 years. This sounds, very almost crazy, but we can, with technologies, really make a difference if we can produce enough corals and have permission and the labor to be able to put them out. This is one of the iconic reefs off of Cancun. They had 2 reefs that literally had 2 to 4 million snorkelers per year go to these 2 reefs. And Hurricane Wilma turned it literally into a rubble zone. In working with the facilities there, we started with just elkhorn and staghorn corals and planted only 15,000 corals 15 years ago. And now this looks like this. Not only did the elkhorn and the staghorn come up, but that naturally smell of a live reef attracted the other species of corals to settle, including soft corals and sponges, so that this, in just less than 2 decades, became back to normal. We did some other neat things. We take some of the corals that we planted about 10 years ago. This one on the left is a Elkhorn Coral set that's about the size of a garbage can, and that we planted about 3 years after Wilma. And we went down and just took that one as a donor. And I don't know if you can see it on the left-hand picture, but those parts of the Elkhorn branch on the very bottom look like they've been nibbled at by a parrotfish, but that was actually me. I had a cutting tool and I made about a dozen little pieces, and you might be able to see them in cement in the just to the left of that one. And here it is just 2 years later. Those are the little pieces that I just stretched my arm out and glued to the bottom. And here's a dozen more that are coming up to size and growing very quickly. So this is done in a land-based lab. This is the lab in Cancun at the Mexico Institute of Fisheries and Aquaculture. And in the Puerto Morales Coral Restoration Lab, where we've given and set up hands-on workshops and tanks where they're literally on their way to try and hit their goal of 250,000 corals within the next 2 years. There's a number of areas that we're gaining so many new things. The new thing I call frag and fly is which we actually go and take that coral in the nursery and don't even bring it back to a land facility, but take a pair of clippers that you see on the left picture and that little plug that was overgrown in my left hand. And I cut around the side on a boat and made these little chips and glued them down and made 200 in just a 20-minute period on a vessel. And this is a picture of a catamaran on the right in Belize, where we put the saw on the catamaran. And during the times where we just with a generator went down and got some live tissue and cut it, and the next morning put it back down. And so you may not need months. This is the picture that I wanted to show you from the beginning. Do you remember that picture where it showed wonderful staghorn and elkhorn coral, and then by the year 2000, nothing? Well, here's a picture in the upper left of 2010, where we planted our first ones with fragments of hope with Lisa Carnes in Belize. There it is just 1 year later. You can see in the lower left, you can see a fish with a elkhorn coral. But this is what it looks like today. This is that exact same spot. Do you believe it? Look at the fish in the habitat. There's almost not any more room for coral if you plant ones that survive the conditions of today. That will eventually get that way, maybe in tens of thousands of years, hopefully by Mother Nature, but I don't think we can wait that long to keep a habitat live. And it's not just the 28 species of corals, it's the thousands of species of fish that require a living reef. And it's our shoreline that needs protection. So in order to do that, I designed a transportable coral restoration unit, one that's ready to go, where I build and acquire the tanks, the pumps, the filters, the pipes, the valves easily here in the US. And I put together an entire system, and then I pack that entire system back into the shipping container and send it to another location. This is the one that is going to Grenada for the Nature Conservancy as part of their At the Water's Edge, where they're going to be growing corals and mangroves to not only get their community involved, but to protect their shoreline and their fisheries and their snorkel tourism. So this system can actually be shipped, arrived on one day, opened up and put together in less than a day with the community, and by day 2, running water and making corals. So our program with Plant a Million Corals is really something that is meant for coastal communities. It's affordable. It's something that instead of the $10 million lab, which I built with Moat, and people came and got training and then went home crying because they thought they needed a $10 million research laboratory to do this. We now can do this for a little over $100,000 and make not a laboratory and a research facility, but a coral nursery in a box and shippable, and be able to train people quickly how to operate these. So my goal of planting 1 million corals was set back a lot with COVID, like everybody else, but it's not just our title, it's our mission, it's our vision. And without producing the corals, you can't even bother going to monitor and assess them. You gotta be able to produce them first and plant them. So it's not just hope for young people. They love it. They want some good news and they want to be able to hands-on train themselves. It's not just a good start. It's help on planet Earth, hope.
Awesome, Dr. Vaughan. Thank you so much. I hope everyone can see why the first time we talked with Dr. Vaughan, how excited we were that he and the Park Service were, already talking about potentially how can we bring this technology to St. John, and the Friends are eager as we look at the years ahead to be a partner and to help support this. So I really appreciate that, and I'm sure there'll be some questions. I grabbed one out of the comments, so we'll have some questions here in a second. So, folks, at this point, I want to first of all say we simply can't thank everyone that is responsible for the success that you heard about, and that we're really excited as we look forward to. But I do want to recognize, first of all, the staff of the Friends, Tonya Lovejoy, Shayla Thomas, Lydia Boynes, Jennifer Stone, Mark Gistwicki. These are the full-time staff that are passionate and just do a ton of work to bring the success of these programs to life. We have some part-time staff, Taylor White, Robin Berlin, that help us both in our trail program and in our accounting. And then we have a whole group of people that are under contract, but they're part of our team, and that's Tiffany Thornton and Paula Smale, and the sea turtle folks you heard about, Adrian Anderson, who work with the park, Willow Melamed, who works with the park, and our turtle program. I also want to give a special shout out. Nigel mentioned the Folklife Festival coming up in February. We have a young woman that works with us. Her name is Aria Athanase. An extremely talented graphic artist, and she has been working with staff at the park and other folks on island, and they've put together an incredible film documentary that our partners at WTJX are going to be airing on President's Day weekend. So stay tuned for that. But Aria is a member of the team, and she comes to us through the National Park Foundation and AmeriCorps programming, and has done a tremendous job really helping us reconnect the park and the community. And also want to recognize folks in our store. If you've been there, Susie and Kathy and Ruby, our staff that help carry the message of the mission of the Friends as visitors come into the visitor center and the store. I want to thank our volunteers, starting with our board members. Hopefully we got everybody on here now, but Andy Rutnick, Rafe Boulon, John Fuller, Curtis Penn, our executive committee, and the rest of our directors, Lanny Clark, Adrian Davis, David DiGiacomo, Tammy Donnelly, Sid Hamling, Audrey Penn, Andrew Lutz, who you heard's term is ending, Miles Stair, and of course, in memory, our board member that we lost this past year, Andy Stillman, and we're really excited to honor his service to the Friends and to St. John. I want to thank our Annenberg docents and our visitor center docents who were able to make it back this year and engage with our visitors. Thank you so much. I know COVID really put a wrinkle in everybody's plans. Thank you to those 99 sea turtle volunteers who made the success of that program possible, and all of the volunteers in our trail program and our walk-up opportunities for trail work. It's hot and it's brutal work, but your help is so appreciated. Thank you to all the volunteers that make our events possible. The Friends is an organization that supports our park, and we can't do it without the help of everyone involved. Thank you to the park staff for your wonderful partnership, and to our community and business partners. And thanks to all of you who are on here. Your support makes it all possible. And so we really can't say thank you enough. But with that, in the final 20 minutes or so that we have left, I'd like to open it up for questions and answers for folks that have them. And if you want to, I'll be very, very honest with you. I don't know the best way to manage 65 people on a Zoom call, but I will start reading off some questions that have come in through the chat. And if folks want to type their questions there, that's great. If you want to raise your hand and speak and ask your question, we'll try to make sure we don't miss you. Just speak up. But first off, Dr. Vaughan, thank you for your work. How does NOAA go along with your project of microfragmentation and volunteers and permits? And second question, do you record water temperature rising as we look at impacts of climate change?
Yes, NOAA has been very active and more active recently in coral restoration in both Puerto Rico and Florida and Hawaii. They have laid out a number of projects in Florida now to the tune of finally funding at a large scale. One of them is called 7 Iconic Reefs, where they took the 7 most popular snorkel spots in the Florida Keys, and they're posting up to $10 million to return these snorkel sites back to normal in the next 5 to 10 years. There are projects in both Puerto Rico from NOAA, especially with, again, some of the past hurricane funding. St. Croix has the Nature Conservancy, which put together 3 of these types of portable trailers, not to be transportable, but to be working there in St. Croix. The question that everybody has with NOAA is still very much directed towards this stony coral rapid tissue loss disease as well. But just to be sure, I happen to be the grayest one in the bunch here that knows that we've gone through 7 other pandemics underwater, and we've never found out how to solve the problem of those pandemics. We just have let Mother Nature have the natural resistance to come back. We now know that there are only a third of the hard corals are very susceptible to stony coral tissue loss. Another third of them are only semi-susceptible, and about another third are totally unsusceptible to stony coral tissue loss disease, one being the Elkhorn and the Staghorn corals and the Porites species. And so we can start with those and try to put out living corals so that the rest will have a chance. I've already seen in the Florida Keys, where we had stony coral tissue loss disease now for going on 4 years, a slacking of the virulence of the disease and genotypes or strains of each species that are resistant. We just need to make more of those. But that's not where we stop with biodiversity for genetics. I didn't show this more than just the picture of us using sexual reproduction in the laboratory. Since that time, instead of getting 11, we've gotten thousands to make it. And every time you get 1,000 to make it from sexual recruits, you get 1,000 new diverse genotypes, just like 1,000 new individuals from 2 parents, or 1,000 individuals from 100 parents. So we're giving more genotype capabilities out there for Mother Nature to decide in the future which one of those are not only going to be susceptible, but maybe some of them resistant to, let's say, higher increasing water temperatures or lowering of the pH, the ocean acidification. What we need to do is just give Mother Nature more genotypes, more types of species out there, and give the reef a fighting chance. If we wait until all of those what ifs are done, then we will probably in the future, even if we wanted to redo the reefs, we'll have lost the 1,000 species of fish and tens of thousands of species of invertebrate that require a living reef to be in place. So we need to do this soon. And we all have finally realized that the other top purpose that a reef does around any islands is break as stormwater. We had Hurricane Irma here, and we had 4.5 feet of water over the Florida Keys. However, the size of the waves offshore of our barrier reef were 38 feet. If our barrier reef was not there, not one person in the Florida Keys would have survived. So we realized that besides the tourism dollar, the fisheries, and just a beautiful thing for people to look at, it's part of our community heritage that keeps us being able to live along the coast. I think I've hit a few of those questions that were listed in the chat. But is there, if there's any others, I'd be available to answer anything more specifically.
How do we ensure with the flow-through system that we're not introducing waterborne diseases? Is there a closed system option?
Yes, my favorite actually and preferred way is that we use a buried intake for our salt water, basically a saltwater well near the coast, so that we're bringing up sterile water from hopefully 20 to 40 feet underground, water that has been there for thousands of years. It's without oxygen or anaerobic, and it has no living organisms in it. It means that we have water that's completely sterile. We have to do a little treatment of getting rid of some of the hydrogen sulfide, the CO2 out of the water. But then I also preference is to use an additional shallow well to inject back in. So not only do we not take any diseases into the nursery, we don't have the risk of any going back out either.
So I don't know if Nigel would have any thoughts on this, or you, Dr. Vaughan, but what's the likely time frame that the Park Service is going to be interested in moving forward with this on St. John? And is there something similar happening on St. Croix?
Well, I can probably let Nigel answer that. I've been in touch with Anatoline from the Regional Park Service I believe it's in South Carolina. And their intent was to first put a unit up in St. Croix at the Salt Creek location. But they are also interested in having ones possibly in St. Thomas and St. John. There's an effort to do something with some private funds also on the east end of St. Croix. And right now, I will hopefully, after my second shot of my vaccine, be able to travel for the first time and finish my contract with the University of the Virgin Islands in St. Thomas. I have the design and plans and equipment to make their new water treatment system for the rebuild of their marine lab there near the airport. But I'm hoping that what we've seen before is that a lot of times private entities, private funding can work faster than necessarily some governmental ones can move as far as speed.
I agree with the private entities helping to move things a little bit faster than the government. Thank you, Dr. Vaughan, for that reference to the work that's being considered for St. Croix over by Salt River Bay, and also us looking at possible locations for a nursery on St. Thomas and St. John. St. Thomas is a good possibility for us. And also, we've been doing a broad assessment of St. Croix and St. John, the Coral, and getting a good assessment of where we feel we can make the biggest difference. And also looking at stony coral tissue disease loss too. So we didn't want to do one without being mindful of the other. So our interest is to see where we can look for interdisciplinary interactions between the fresh water coming down the slopes, getting into the mangroves, stabilizing the shoreline, and the coral. So looking for the opportunities to look at all of those systems in collaboration and how that then impacts fisheries. So we have some circles on the maps that we're looking at, but main thing is, yes, let's see if we can get the nurseries set up, and then have those places where we can look at the plantings that hopefully will be able to get some of the results that we've seen on your incredible slides.
Yeah, and I would just add the Friends are eager to see this work move forward, and so when we're ready, the Friends are certainly ready to partner. Other questions that I missed that Dr. Vaughan has not covered, or any questions for Nigel? We will record. We are recording the meeting, and if presentations are shareable, we will certainly have those available from the Friends website. If anybody wants to grab those to look at in the future. Any other questions? Am I missing anybody? I do want to put another plug. Thank you, Tony. The 30th anniversary of the Virgin Islands National Park Folklife Festival documentary will air on February 13th at 3 p.m. and February 14th at 5 p.m. on WTJX. And we are certainly working with the park to make sure that documentary will be available via the park's website or the Friends website, or wherever we can make that available from. Can we get more details or information on the timing for the school land swap and the Canel cleanup? Nigel, that sounds like you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. So with the school land swap, the goal is for us to move forward with the archaeology, the evaluation, and the environmental assessment all during the spring and the summer time period, so that we're getting toward a final agreement in the fall toward the winter. So fingers crossed, by the time we get to the end of 2021, we should have a clear path as to whether or not the exchange can happen. So there's a lot of work that has to happen in the meantime. The evaluation itself takes about 6 months, 6 to 8 months. So the timeline is for us to do as much of that engagement with the public in the spring and the summer as we're getting toward a decision toward the fall and the winter. For Canel, the goal, as I mentioned, was to go ahead and start the environmental engineering cost analysis, and I'm expecting us to have something that we can share within the public within kind of days to weeks. This is not months away. We're expecting this to be very soon, and we'll be able to share where we're aiming to do the analysis, the types of chemicals that we're looking for. Most of that's already been out in the public already, so there's nothing really new there, but at least just confirming and giving the public a sense of what we're aiming to do once we move toward the risk assessment and the cleanup. So I'm hoping that we can get things moving very fast in the coming weeks. So please stay tuned. There will be more about how you can engage and what we're expecting to do and when it's going to happen. So stay tuned for that.
He's asking about entry restrictions to enter the USVI through the airport. I don't know if that's coral related or if that's just COVID related. So I would just direct you to the Department of Health website for those restrictions.
Todd, if I may, there is a portal. It's I forgot what it's
Thank
called, but if you go to the Virgin Islands Tourism website, they have a portal and they update it regularly. So any of the restrictions for travel into the BI, anytime there's a change and update, that's the resource to go to. That's the place to go. So I recommend everyone to go to the portal that the tourism has set up.
Don't think there's been a change at this point that there's a within a 5-day window, you have to have a test, negative test results for active COVID or a positive antigen test from having previously had COVID. What's involved with creating a sterile marine well? In a nutshell, Dr. Vaughan.
It's almost all areas that are close to or on the water, is to just get down in the sand in what is the old calcium carbonate rock that was previous decades of coral, and to put a 2-inch well pipe down in it. Usually places, if they have a dock that is out on the water, partway out the dock, just sticking 20 feet down by using a water jet, or if it has to go through rock, a small portable well drilling system, and testing it. Most of the islands on land have a freshwater potential, so you either have to get down past the freshwater into salt, or my favorite is to just be right on the water or under the water in some sort of structure for one.
Nigel, if there's anything else you can say about who will pay for the Canel environmental assessment or what's going on with the lease, there's questions about that.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say about the lease at this point, but the environmental assessment, or at least the engineering and cost analysis that we're aiming to conduct, that will be paid for by the Park Service. We're paying for that.
This is work that's been under contract and ongoing for a number of years, correct?
Correct. It's been under contract for 4 years, I believe, and now we can complete it. So and it's an independent contractor. They're going by EPA standards. So we will let the science reveal what it reveals, and we'll follow the science with this.
Okay. What is the current status of coral and mangrove restoration in Hurricane Hole? I'll just say that the park had requested support from the Friends as we looked into 2021 to initiate a restoration project around the mangroves there. In the past, we have supported research on those systems, and so we were excited. We're going to be working with Dr. Gary Ray, and folks from USGS on beginning to look at techniques on how can we help speed up the restoration of the mangroves in Hurricane Hole. So that work will be getting started a little bit later this year, early 2021. Is there a figure for the cost of the environmental assessment, Nigel?
I'll be able to share that very soon. We'll be able to share that cost. Hold on.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone?
While we're waiting for other questions to come in, I did want to just acknowledge and express my deep gratitude for the Stillman family. It's very touching, and also just expands that living legacy of Andy with the endowment that focuses on education and also cultural preservation. So I'm very, very glad to see there's a way that all the work and the contributions that Andy provided over his years of service with the Friends has a way of now continuing deep into the future.
Okay, well, with that, I just want to say, is Caroline Rogers collaborating with Friends with restoration and Hurricane Hole. Dr. Rogers has been a partner in work out there. She also helped introduce us to others within USGS that are mangrove experts. And so we are definitely working together with folks with that expertise. When can we get the playground finished? The playground will be moving forward together with the ball field this year. And so I'm happy about that. I wish it was finished 3 years ago, but we are moving forward. We have a local contractor focused on the playground, working with Barefoot Architects to finalize the plans for that with minor tweaks as the ball field plans are finalized. As Nigel said, we're working now to make sure that we have the entire site planned appropriately for drainage and grading. And then once that work happens, we'll be moving forward. Of course, we've been waiting to really launch into fully fundraising mode for the playground until we know we're breaking ground. And so we're getting very close to that point, and we're excited about that. Okay. Did you have a question or a comment, Dr. Vaughan?
Yeah, there's one thing I'd just like to add that was a pleasant surprise from building our land-based nurseries, is that it became very easy to do in any weather, any circumstances, with anybody that wants to volunteer at any age, because you don't need to be a swimmer, you don't need to hold your breath, you don't need to worry about if the wind is blowing too dangerously. And the second is that we found it to be an amazing educational tool for children. In fact, we have now a full STEM education program with the Boy Scouts of America at their high adventure camp. It forms their STEM education because kids would love to learn more about corals than even they would about sharks. So it's been an amazing educational tool that I never had expected before.
The one thing the Friends is always able to provide are top-notch volunteers, ready and eager to help out. So we look forward to that. Okay, well, folks, it's 3 o'clock, and I'm always respectful of folks' time. I just want to say for the well wishes, I really appreciate that. This decision was heart-wrenching for my family and I. We love St. John, we love the Friends, we love the park. We have real family needs that have to be a priority for us, and so I will be back. I will be supportive in visiting, and so I look forward to that. And with that, I just want to say thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Dr. Vaughan. Thank you, Andy. Thanks everyone for being here, and all of this is recorded and will be available if we missed anything. So thank you all.
Thank you, Todd.
Stay safe. Andy, back to you if you have any final words.
No, just to say it was a great presentation. I think the coral, being able to do restorations much quicker than before. I know that speaking of Andy Stillman, he at one time was so impressed with Dr. Vaughan in Florida and the initial work he was doing, and it sort of fell by the wayside. So I am very glad that we have that technology now, and that the same reefs that I viewed here 50 years ago that were just resplendent with color and fish and corals are now some of them just white, endless stretches of dead coral. So the idea that we could possibly bring these all back, I think, is probably one of the most encouraging things for our underwater life here in the national park and the national monument. So yes, that, and of course, Nigel, presented his plans for the future, what he's doing, where he wants to go, and what's in the works. Shows that we're all on the same page. We're all moving forward. We look forward to an end of the pandemic restrictions, so we can get back to seeing people in person and begin a lot of these volunteer programs again that we've had to put to the side. So again, thank you to Nigel for your presentation, and of course, Todd, you did a great job. We're going to miss you, and I'm sure between now and the time you leave, you're going to receive a lot more accolades for work you've done over the years, 2 years you've been here. So it's good to know you'll be there for us in the future if we need you, and we hope to keep you engaged. So thank you, everybody, for coming onto this Zoom, and next year we'll see you all in person. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Bye.